the program today. Criminal cases to be deferred following last Saturday's fire at the DPP's office. The non-governmental electoral reform group is calling for more time to study proposed electoral reforms. A 42-year-old woman, her son, and their cousin are in custody in connection with the break and enter and the larceny of the Courts store in New Amsterdam. In the region, Price Smart incorporated the American Warehouse Shopping Club in Barbados since 2001, says it is trying to shield members from higher prices while grappling with higher costs. A policeman and a Coast Guard officer shot and killed each other on Sunday morning in an incident in Trinidad, which investigators say stemmed from a quarrel over a woman. And internationally, several persons have been killed and many others injured after a car went into a Christmas parade in the U.S. state of Wisconsin. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. The Health Ministry says it has assisted scores of Venezuelan nationals occupying an area in Arnabishi Port Kaituma who are suffering from chronic malnutrition and waterborne diseases. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says health officials rushed to the area after reports of chronic malnutrition and severe diseases plagued the migrants.
What we found generally in the camp is that it's very unhygienic because you have a lot of people living together. The team estimate that there are 198 persons living in very close proximity, and they are from 25 different families. Because of the unhygienic conditions, they're using the same water from the river, and they're using the river to wash and do other things there. So the water is not of good quality.
The health minister says a large number of children among the group were assessed by the medical team who were sickened by waterborne diseases.
At the time, while the reports were that there was severe malnutrition, what we found was that some of the children were chronically malnourished. I'm not too sure whether they have had prior medical attention, like things like vaccination and so forth. We also discovered that some of the children, they had severe skin rashes. Some of them had like upper respiratory infections, and quite a few of them had diarrheal diseases.
The team further discovered on Sunday that a number of adults were also sick.
We also, on Sunday, the team also saw 42 adults, and again, we saw similar types of illnesses among the adults, in addition to which we were able to detect among the group some cases of malaria. And again, they were given treatment based on the medical conditions that they had.
The health minister says the more than 15 families of Venezuelan migrants present no immediate threats but are living under deplorable conditions.
Well, where these persons are located, maybe about 5 minutes away, you probably have some persons, Guyanese, who are living there. So they have actually gone and settled in an uninhabited area. And So I don't think they're directly affecting anybody within that area. I think their challenge is how to maybe access food, maybe get some jobs. We were told that some of them would go to Port Kaituma to look for jobs. So they're trying to make a living.
Dr. Anthony says the ministry is monitoring the migrants medically and the Civil Defense Commission is assisting with essential items. The Ministry of Health has recommended the formula for persons requiring COVID vaccine boosters. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony, during Monday's COVID update, stipulated how the ministry will administer the boosters.
If you got 2 doses of Pfizer, then we're recommending that if you're doing a booster, that you get a Pfizer as your booster. If you had Moderna and Moderna, you can either do another Moderna as your booster, but right now we don't have that. But there's nothing wrong if you want to get a Pfizer as your booster. If you took a Johnson & Johnson vaccine, then after 52 days after, you can get a booster. With Sinopharm, if you had 2 doses of Sinopharm, then your booster should be a Sinopharm vaccine taken 3 to 6 months after your second dose.
The health minister says healthcare workers, persons over 18 years old with comorbidities, and those 50 years and older are entitled to get the boosters. Dr. Anthony further outlined the formula for the other vaccines used in Guyana.
If you did AstraZeneca, so you had 2 doses of AstraZeneca, then your third dose, you can either opt to get AstraZeneca again, or you can use an mRNA vaccine, which would be Pfizer. So 6 months after your second dose of AstraZeneca, you can get mRNA or a Pfizer vaccine to complement your AstraZeneca. If you took Sputnik V and you completed both doses, then you can take a J&J vaccine, and that would complement the series. So you can use the J&J as a booster.
The ministry began administering the booster doses as of Monday, November the 22nd, 2021. In the wake of the fire that last weekend displaced the chambers of the Director of Public Prosecution, DPP, the state is from today expected to ask the courts to reschedule cases. The DPP's chambers, located on a rabbit walk opposite the Kingston seawall, was not destroyed by fire. Attorney-at-law Shalimer Hack says appearances before the courts will be affected.
To some extent, yes, because all the documents are mixed up. They just brought it out in the circumstances of a blazing fire. Because the fire was raging in the building, and you saw that for yourselves. So it's all mixed up. The staff in the DP's office would be appearing in the assizes, and all the files and depositions would have been in the office, except for those which lawyers would have had for matters which they're currently doing. And even though some of them may have left it in the office. And then the police prosecutors, they would have had files in here for matters which they're doing in the magistrate's court.
The DPP says the documents have been saved.
We have been able to save the documents as well as the hard drives for the computers. And we thank God for that.
DPP Shalimer Hack. The non-governmental Electoral Reform Group, ERG, has refused to comment on the proposed amendments to the Representation of the People Act, ROPA. Instead, that organization is publicly calling for more time for consultations and generating inclusive consensus. The ERG coordinator is Lawrence Lachman Singh.
We would certainly urge the government to consider lengthening the 6-week period that is almost halfway done already, and to also create more spaces for us to talk to each other face to face. This working indirectly with each other through the media, I think, is a recipe for confrontation. It doesn't help us to reach a consensus, which is ultimately what is needed in a political reform process that involves an election.
In the absence of an inclusive process to begin the discussion rather than media engagements, the ERG wants a national conference on electoral reform to bring together stakeholders from political parties, the private sector, and the civil society to discuss the issue. Mr. Lachman Singh hopes that the numerous election observer mission reports can be used as the basis for a consultation to examine issues such as the removal of the names of deceased persons and migrants from the voters list and campaign financing. The ERG hopes that a proper discussion on the advantage of incumbency in elections, closer relations between political representatives and constituents, efficient process for the declaration of results, and the composition of the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM will be addressed. The Ministry of Health says Guyana's death toll from the coronavirus is now 976. This with the passing of 3 men and 1 woman at a COVID hospital. Only 1 person was fully vaccinated. The Health Ministry says that of the 67 persons who are hospitalized, 10 are seriously sick and are in the COVID intensive care. Figures show that 52 new cases were recorded yesterday. Latest official statistics show that 1,878 persons have been ordered to isolate themselves to avoid spreading the virus. Veteran Guyanese aviator and aviation educator Captain Malcolm Chanasu died early Monday morning. He passed away in hospital almost 1 month after a speeding minibus slammed into the car he was driving in Kingston, Georgetown. Guyana's aviation community was almost immediately plunged into mourning. Director General of the Guyana Civil Aviation Authority, retired Lieutenant Colonel Egbert Field, expressed deep sadness at the passing of someone he regarded as a family friend.
Malcolm, he has trained hundreds of pilots while he was in Guyana Airways. And his training, you could rest assured that a pilot having undergone that could secure a job anywhere in the world that he goes, because he's trained to the finest. His oversight and the management of the aviation training school, the Art Williams and Harry Wendt training school, that is one of the most sterling contributions to aviation in Guyana.
Veteran Guyanese pilot Jerry Govaya is also shocked at the passing of Mr. Chanasu, who he says played a major role in the development of aviation standards in Guyana.
The aviation sector in Guyana became better because of him. Ogle Airport, for what it is today in terms of its compliance with, is because of him. He was a stickler to standards and safety, and it's a great loss. But I think more than thinking about the loss, we have to think about the contribution he made to Guyana and to Guyana aviation. Every one of us benefited from his wisdom and his keen sense of safety and compliance with regulations and so on.
Captain Jerry Govaya. A 42-year-old woman, her son, and their cousin are in custody in connection with the break and enter and the larceny of the Courts store in New Amsterdam. Police say that a 15-year-old boy told police that he and his 18-year-old cousin stole the items from the Courts branch at St. Anne's Street in New Amsterdam. Investigators say that a number of the stolen items was discovered from a clump of bushes. Others were found in a wooden guard hut at another location where the woman was located. The motorcycle, valued more than $350,000, has not been located. Police say that early Saturday morning, the assistant manager was informed that the northwestern door was broken down. The court's official said she checked and noticed the items missing. Investigators say that the recovered items were identified as the property of Courts. Apart from the motorcycle, the other items that were stolen included 2 laptops, 3 pairs of headphones, 2 cellular phones, 1 tablet, and a skate game. Now for the news in the region. PriceSmart Incorporated, the American warehouse shopping club that has operated in Barbados since 2001, says it is trying to shield members from higher prices while grappling with higher costs associated with supply challenges and container shortages. Nation News reports the company's chief executive officer, Sherry Rambegi, as saying that while the company was in a position to be able to mitigate much of the high prices, the increased cost caused by transportation, freight, and other supply chain issues ultimately has to be reflected in the pricing. CEO Sherry Rambegi highlighted the situation during a recent earnings call with financial analysts. She says PriceSmart's 13 Caribbean stores suffered a 1.8% decline in net merchandise sales during the quarter that ended August 31st. In addition to its lone store at Green Hill, St. Michael, PriceSmart operates 47 warehouse clubs in 12 countries, including 4 in Trinidad and Tobago and 1 each in Aruba, Jamaica, and the United States Virgin Islands. Two men, one a policeman and the other a Coast Guard officer, shot and killed each other on Sunday morning in an incident in Diego Martin, which investigators say stemmed from a quarrel over a woman. According to a Newsday report, the victims have been identified as SRP Constable Jomo Galston and Coast Guard Officer Jabari Francois. In the wake of the killings, the 34-year-old mother of 4 whose last child was fathered by Francois is regretting not doing more to stop him from leaving her homeless than 2 hours before he was shot dead. Speaking on Sunday afternoon, Kerry Smith said Francois visited her La Porta home at 1 a.m. on Sunday. She said she spoke with him and invited him to spend the night with their son, but he refused. Less than 2 hours later, he was dead. Police reported that about 2:20 a.m., Francois, 33, of Waterwheel Road, River Estate, Diego Martin, had an argument with Police Constable Galston near North Post Road, Diego Martin. Police say after Galston dropped off a female friend, Francois approached him and knocked on the window of the driver's door. Both men began arguing. Francois pulled out a gun and opened fire on Galston. The policeman, who was also armed at the time, returned fire, hitting Francois once in the chest. Francois slumped to the ground and died. while Galston, 37, who is from Germain Avenue, Upper Ivory Street, San Juan, drove a short distance before crashing his Nissan AD wagon and died in the car. Venezuela's National Electoral Council, CNE, awarded victory to the ruling Socialist Party in 20 governorships and 3 to opposition politicians in an initial announcement on Monday following local and regional elections. Shortly after the first results were published, leftist President Nicolas Maduro celebrated the government's triumph. President Nicolas Maduro says the victory is impressive and worth celebrating, surrounded by supporters. A Reuters news report says the results are a setback for the opposition leaders who returned to the fray after boycotting presidential polls in 2018 and congressional elections in 2020. They argued that a fair vote was impossible due to rigging and intimidation by violent gangs loyal to Maduro. This year, opposition politicians decided to contest the elections as they were frustrated by the failure of U.S. sanctions to dislodge Maduro, as well as emboldened by the presence of election observers from the European Union. The South American country's top electoral authority reported only 41.8% of registered voters turned out to cast their ballot on Sunday, equivalent to some 8.1 million people. In 2017 regional elections, the ruling party won 19 governorships, while opposition politicians took 4. The only mayoral result announced in the CNE's first bulletin came from the capital Caracas, where the ruling party was also declared the victor. And lastly, in the region for today, the Free National Movement's one-day convention on November 27 to select its new leader to cost the party an estimated $100,000. The Bahamas Tribune reports Treasurer Dwight Swayer has said all of the costs associated with the event were absorbed by the party and is a very expensive undertaking. He was asked by the Tribune to reveal the expense as the party announced it officially closed nominations for leader of the party yesterday at 17 hours 1. Michael Pintard, Kwesi Thompson, and Iram Lewis, are the only candidates on the register contesting the leadership position. Mr. Smith says the cost of a convention has always been very expensive, and the party has decided it will take and cover the entire cost of the convention. The party also addressed speculation that whoever wins the post of leader next week will be acting in the interim until the organization held its main convention in February. Deputy Leader Peter Turnquest says the post would not be up for grabs next year. Mr. Turnquest says the council has authorized for the leadership convention at the end of the month, and the convention to be held in February will be for all other officers from deputy leader straight down. He said the party's constitution called for a convention every 2 years, at which time the party would go through choosing a leader and executives. The party is also confident that choosing a new leader is what the party needs to unite supporters. Here now is your international news from the BBC.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. Police in the US state of Wisconsin are holding the driver of the car which ploughed into a Christmas parade in the town of Waukesha, killing at least 5 people and injuring 40 others. The chief of police, Dan Thompson, said it wasn't yet known whether the incident was terror-related. The Reverend David Simmons is a local clergyman who was at the scene.
One of our policemen took 3 shots to try to stop the vehicle. And then police on our end of the street basically told us that we needed to vacate the street. So we always have our church open during these parades for restrooms and warmth and stuff like that. So we started pulling people into the church.
A new report commissioned by the World Health Organization has warned that the progress the world is making towards ending the coronavirus pandemic is too slow. It says resources have been concentrated towards the developed world, while people are continuing to die in poorer countries where there's little or no access to vaccines. The German health minister says he's against compulsory COVID-19 vaccinations, but he's urged everybody to get the jab as the rate of infections continues to rise. Jens Spahn said it was a moral obligation to get vaccinated, not a personal decision, and he had a stark warning for Germans.
Wahrscheinlich wird am Ende dieses Winters,
probably by the end of this winter, as is sometimes cynically said, pretty much everyone in Germany will be vaccinated, cured or dead. That's the situation. With this highly contagious Delta variant, it is very, very likely that whoever isn't vaccinated will get infected over the next few months.
Mr. Spahn's comments come as neighbouring Austria reimposed a full national lockdown and announced that vaccinations would be made compulsory by February. The leaders of Belgium and the Netherlands have criticised violence seen in their countries over the weekend, linked to protests against coronavirus restrictions. The Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said there had been 3 nights of pure violence perpetrated by idiots. His Belgian counterpart, Alexander De Croo, called violent scenes in Brussels on Sunday absolutely unacceptable. The United Nations top expert on freedom of expression has voiced concerns about what she called the distorted media environment in Hungary ahead of elections next year. Irene Khan warned that freedom of expression should not be abused. Nick Thorpe reports.
Irene Khan met representatives of the government, diverse media and NGOs in Hungary. Freedom of expression should not be abused to create a toxic environment. I see a distorted media environment where pluralism, diversity and independence of media is being questioned, she added. Prime Minister Viktor Orban's Fidesz party has been in power since 2010. During that time, the country has slipped from 56th to 92nd place on the World Press Freedom Index of Reporters Without Borders.
World News from the BBC. Bahrain says that it's foiled a planned attack which it described as being linked to terrorist groups in Iran. The Interior Ministry says a number of suspected militants have been arrested and weapons, which it says came from Iran, have been seized. The South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on men to do more to end gender-based violence. He said sexual abuse was a problem of male violence and men should take the lead in reporting it. Mr. Ramaphosa's comments came in response to an increase in reported cases of rape. The transport and delivery company Uber says it will add cannabis to the range of products that can be ordered via its app. Uber said it will make online orders of cannabis available in the Canadian province of Ontario. Canada legalised the recreational use of the drug 3 years ago, but illegal producers still control a large share of the market. China and the US will team up in a special doubles match at the World Table Tennis Championships next month to mark the 50th anniversary of ping-pong diplomacy, a series of friendly matches between American and Chinese players which heralded a thaw in relations between Beijing and Washington. Here's Celia Hatton.
In 1971, an American ping-pong player attending the World Championships in Japan that year mistakenly boarded the Chinese team's bus. An unexpected friendship between the players resulted in the famous ping-pong diplomacy matches between China and a visiting American delegation, marking the start of diplomatic ties between Beijing and Washington. 50 years later, there's scope for history to repeat itself. Mixed American-Chinese pairings and a series of special matches at the upcoming championships in Houston, Texas, will allow, officials say, us all to remember that small exchanges can have a lasting significance.
Celia Hassan reporting. And that's the latest BBC World News.
And that was your international news. Here now is a recap of the highlights. A group of Venezuelan nationals occupying an area in Arnabishi, Port Kaituma, who were suffering from chronic malnutrition and waterborne diseases, is being monitored by the Health Ministry. The Health Ministry has recommended mix and matching for COVID boosters vaccine in some cases, as it rolls out the program today. Criminal cases to be deferred following last Saturday's fire at the DPP's office. The non-governmental electoral reform group is calling for more time to study proposed electoral reforms. A 42-year-old woman, her son, and their cousin are in custody in connection with the break and enter and larceny of the Courts store in New Amsterdam. In the region, Price Smart Incorporated, the American warehouse shopping club in Barbados since 2001, says it is trying to shield members from higher prices while grappling with higher costs. A policeman and a Coast Guard officer shot and killed each other on Sunday morning in an incident in Trinidad, which investigators say stemmed from a quarrel over a woman. And internationally, several persons have been killed and many others injured after a car plowed into a Christmas parade in the U.S. state of Wisconsin. And that was your major newscast. I'm Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.